Hello, welcome back to Learn Oikonomia. Just understand the Keynesian consumption function. Actually, we are continuing with what we have already discussed. I have already done three sections on Keynesian consumption function. I'll be providing the links of the same in the description box. So this video is actually the continuation of what we have already done. It is very important for you to look into the previous videos in order to understand this particular video. So with that, let's get started with the Keynesian consumption function. In this video, what we are going to look into is the Irving Fisher in the temporal choice aspect. And as I have already told you, what Keynesian function is, consumption function is all about, and all it's already dealt with the previous videos. So please go into those videos. Please go into those videos to have a better idea. Okay, then you can come back to this video to continue with the same topic. So come to the Irving Fisher and how he is linking his arguments with the intertemporal choice and all would be discussed now. When people decide how much to consume and save, they must consider both the present and future, right? Because our future consumption would depend upon the decision what we have taken in the present. The more consumption they enjoy today and the less they will be able to enjoy tomorrow, because the more consumption you will enjoy today means that if you increase the consumption in the present day, that means that you will be able to save only little for your future. That will definitely determine your consumption for the future, right? In making this kind of a trade-off between present and future, and saving and consumption in the past and saving and the consumption in the future and saving the consumption in the present, all these things, that in making all these kinds of decision, there actually exists a trade-off. In this kind of trade-off, or in making this kind of a decision, a household must look ahead of their expected future income and to the consumption of goods and services they could afford in the future. Irving Fisher, he has developed a model with which economists analyze how rational, forward-looking consumers make intertemporal choices. That is, choices involving different periods of time. That is intertemporal choice, right? Fisher's model shows the constraints consumers face and how they choose consumption as well as saving. The intertemporal budget constraints should be understood. Here, everyone would prefer to increase the quantity of food they consume, both in the present as well as past. People wish to consume more and more, right? This is what is expected by a rational consumer, or this is the main motive of the rational consumer, to increase their utility or to maximize their utility. So this is the main motive of a consumer. The reason they consume less than they desire is that their consumption is constrained by their income, because there is a budget constraint. That means that you can consume only what you can consume only with what you earn. You can consume only that or that amount of commodities or that quantities of commodities, uh, because that is an income constraint, right? That's an income constraint in the sense that the income will tell you only this much you can afford, only this much you can consume now, because your income is less, or your income is not letting you to consume a bigger quantity. So all this, or your income is not letting you to consume a luxury commodity, or only this much income you can set for your consumption, and you can set apart this much only for your savings. So all these things are determined by the level of the income that you have. When people are deciding how much to consume today and how much to consume tomorrow, in taking this kind of a decision, they will face an intertemporal budget constraint. They will take into consideration the budget constraint for today and budget constraint that they would be experiencing tomorrow. To understand how people decide their level of consumption, we need to examine this kind of a constraint. We examine the decision facing a consumer who lives for 2 periods. In the period 1, this would be represent the consumer's youth period, and period 2 would represent the old age of the consumer. So there will be some differences in the pattern of consumption made by the consumer, because in the youth, that means that you are earning, you are getting income, you are actually receiving some income. In the old age, what you are doing is that you are making use of your savings that you have already made in the past, and in this period you are actually not earning that much amount that you were earning in your youth days. The consumer earns income Y1 and consumes C1 in period 1, and earns income Y2 and C2 in the consumes C2 in the period 2. Because the consumer has some opportunity to borrow and save, C in any period can be neither greater or less than Y in that period. Just all these things are assumptions. Okay, just after making these kinds of assumptions, you can consider how the consumer's income in the two periods and the consumption C in the two periods would behave. In period 1, S1 is equal to Y1 minus C1. That is, saving in period 1 would be determined by your income minus your consumption in period 1. And here S is a saving, Y is the income, and C is your consumption. In the case of period 2, C equals accumulated saving included the interest earned on the S plus period uh, uh, this plus period else Y. This means that you have taken into consideration the interest that you earn as well. So C2 is equal to 1 plus R inverse plus Y2. Here R is the interest rate. Okay. For example, you can see that if the interest rate is determined at 5%, then for every pound of 5 in period 1, the consumer enjoys an extra dollar or pound. If you are taking the interest in terms of pound, even you have to express the income, interest rate, everything in terms of pound only. And if you're going for interest rates, if you're computing interest rate in terms of dollars, you can express everything, every other figures. For example, your wage or interest rate or price or whatever it may be in terms of pound only. So, okay. So here 1.05 of consumption in period 2 should be expressed in terms of pound only. Okay. In the period 2, the model says that the consumer does not save in the second period. Two equations still apply if the consumer is borrowing rather than saving in period 1, and S represents both saving as well as borrowing. In period first, C1 is actually lesser than Y1. That means that your income is more and you are not consuming the entire part of your income. You are making some kind of saving, and saving is positive, it's greater than 0. And if C1 is greater than Y1, the consumer is actually borrowing, because in order to deal with some necessities, in order to consume some necessities, the consumer will definitely make some kind of consumption, right? Even if the income of the consumer is less, or even if the consumer doesn't have any income, he or she should consume at least for the necessity needs, right? So in order to finance this necessity needs, in order to finance for the consumption of this necessities, what the consumer does is that he or she would go and borrow. Let us assume that the interest rate for borrowing is same as the interest rate of saving. To derive the consumer's budget constraint, just combine the equation. Substitute the first equation for S into the second equation. If you do that, you will be getting that C2 is equal to 1 plus R into Y1 minus C1 plus Y2. By rearranging the terms, you will get 1 plus R into C1 plus C2 is equal to 1 plus R into Y1 plus Y2. Now just divide both the sides by 1 plus R, so that we will be getting C1 plus C2 divided by 1 plus R is equal to Y1 plus 1 to Y2 divided into 1 plus R. This equation relates consumption in the two periods to income in the two periods. The consumer's budget constraint could be interpreted very easily. That means that if R is equal to 0, that means that if the interest rate is 0, the budget constraint would say that C is equal to C1 plus C2 and Y is equal to Y1 plus Y2. If the interest rate is positive, or if it is greater than 0, future consumption and future income would be discounted on the basis of 1 plus R. This discounting arises from the interest earned on savings. Since the consumer earns interest on Y and this is saved, the future Y or the future income is worth less than current income. Similarly, because future consumption is paid out of the saving that you have earned, on the basis of which you have earned interest, the future consumption costs less than current consumption. The factor 1 by 1 plus r is the price of the second period consumption measured in terms of the first period consumption. It is the amount of the first period consumption that the consumer must forego to obtain 1 unit of extra consumption in the second period. If you look into the consumer's budget constraint, this is shown in the figure here. It shows the combination of the first period and second period consumption. That is, the consumer can choose between the first period and second period. If he chooses points A and B, he consumes less his income in the first period and saves that part for the second period. If he chooses points between A and C, he consumes more in first period and he borrows in the second period to make the difference. If you look into the consumer's preferences, you can see that consumer preference regarding the consumption in the two periods could be represented by using the indifference curves. And indifference curve shows the combination of two commodities based on which the consumers would be indifferent. Here the IC shows a combination of two consumptions in two periods that make consumers equally happy. Higher ICs would be preferred to lower ones, and here we can have two ICs in this indifference map. The consumer is equally happy at the points W, X, but and Y, but if you refer to the points Z to W, X or Y, because Z is higher than Z is lying on a higher indifference curve. So here Y, X, W would be equal. The consumer would be indifferent among all these points, but the consumer want more, right? The consumer prefer more to less. As a result, point Z is superior to Y, X and W, and Y, X and W is inferior to point Z. How can we optimize our consumption pattern? Having discussed the consumer's budget constraint and preferences, we can consider the decision how much consume, or how can, given your budget constraint, how can you attain a maximum consumption in such a ways to optimize your consumption pattern. The consumer would like to end up with the best possible combination of consumption in the two periods. That is, on the high, the consumer will try to place his consumption pattern on the highest possible indifference curve. But the budget constraint requires a consumer consumer also ends up or below the budget line, because the budget line measures the total resources available to him. He cannot go beyond his budget line because his income is not allowing him to go beyond the budget line. He can make his consumption happen on or or below the budget line. The figure shows that the consumer achieves the highest level of satisfaction by choosing the point on the budget constraint that is on the highest IC. At the optimum point, IC is tangent to budget constraint, where the slope of IC is equal to the slope of budget line. We can conclude that at point O, the MR is equal to 1 plus R. The consumer chooses consumption in two periods so that the MR is equal to 1 plus R. So that's all. Please like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos, and I welcome you to my Telegram group and Telegram channel to discuss your doubts. Thank you.